Yes, after Iran, after Myanmar, after Papua or Cambodia, let's go to Africa, which is getting more popular now as well. Even in the cinemas with Black Panther, you've all seen one of the best movies for the Marvel series. For us, developed markets, it's like Australia, France, Europe, as we know. Mature emerging markets will be, of course, Iran, UAE, Pakistan, with the wonderful job that has been done by the guys from Zamin, for example, etc. Early stage emerging markets, it's like Botswana, Mali, Ethiopia, Uganda, PNG in a way, Malawi, and a lot of markets in Africa. So some key factors for those early stage emerging markets growing fast now: young and fast growing population, rapid urbanization, rising incomes, widespread technology adoption. It's always nice to see that in those markets people would think that they are not connected, they are not online, etc. All the numbers we see online are mostly internet penetration with like broadband internet, so they are really low. But when we speak about internet like Facebook, Instagram, etc., it's really high. So Facebook is betting a lot on those emerging markets. So Africa, in terms of population, is growing really, really fast. So it will be huge at the end of the century. Working age population will be above China and India quite quickly. So there's a huge market there. So what we do, we co-build and operate and grow those platforms in some of these markets. So you see French-speaking African countries on the top left, like Mali or Burkina Faso, and some others down south, close to South Africa, which bring a lot of business. We'll see that. And some on the Horn of Africa, like Ethiopia, which is a 100 million people market, one of the fastest growing economy on the planet. A lot of things are happening there, even if now it's a little bit in troubles in terms of politics. And Somalia, which is maybe one of the less secure countries in Africa, but half of it is Somaliland, and it's quite, there's a lot of things happening there, and we can see frequently on our platforms properties for like 100, 200, 300,000 US dollars there, and they are being traded locally, so it's quite surprising. So after seeing things about the sales teams, etc., we'll see things about, okay, in early stage emerging markets, we need to find 101 ways to generate revenues and to look at all those different revenue streams. So the first one is we all use that, Google AdSense, but it's really low. We don't get a lot of money, especially in those early stage emerging markets, and we all want to go to those transaction fees. Who's using, for example, Google AdSense on their portals? I think most of you. No. So, but yeah, it generates a little bit of money. But problem with Google AdSense: low revenues, low quality of advertising, especially in those markets, because there's no real dedicated advertisers there. So we get a lot of random things. So it's not targeted. Even if we get a good share of the revenue, that's okay. But it's easy to set up. It works everywhere. We don't need to negotiate, and it starts to initiate some revenues. And for us, for example, in Africa, some of the best performing markets are either big, like Ethiopia, or close to South Africa, because we get a lot of views from South Africa, like Lesotho, Swaziland, Zambia, Botswana, Malawi, etc. So then after we discovered another way to generate revenues, Facebook Audience Network. So Facebook can pay you to create content and to display it on their platform. You get revenues pretty much as Google, and you get the same issues, but it's quite easy to set up at the end. But the problem is for that, you need to speak a lot about the industry, a lot. You need to create a lot of content. So it's not always easy. After that, once we have all of this set up, we try to find a lot of direct advertisers. So we go, our sales teams on the ground, so we have guys on the ground in all of these markets. So they go on the streets, they look for those local businesses, it can be restaurants, any kind of businesses, and they offer them advertising. So we create banners for them, etc. It generates quite a lot of revenue comparing to Google because it's really highly targeted. Those guys that don't know how to advertise, that don't know how to use, of course, Google AdWords or to use Facebook, etc., to get advertising, to do advertising there. So it's quite interesting. After, of course, we are speaking every day with agencies. So there's many ways to generate revenues with agencies, offering them a CRM system, customized websites, cloud solution to store all of their documents, the documents with their customers, etc., and even going to create for them some small kind of agents mobile solution. But it requires a lot of efforts, custom development, teams on the ground, of course. But the good thing on that is you generate a lot of really good relationship with those guys. You get a really higher revenue. You understand more their needs. You solve their problems, and you continue to get closer to a transaction. And in Africa, I think people don't think that there is a big real estate market, and there's a lot of agencies, a lot of agents, a lot of kind of semi-professional agents. They sell properties or they rent properties as a hobby or just to generate some income, as well as selling cars, for example, and other things. Then we go into that secondary transaction market with insurance, home loans. So same thing. There's a lot of big insurance companies coming there, coming either from South Africa or coming from Europe down to those French-speaking countries, etc. And they are quite modern in their approach. They offer the same kind of services, the same kind of products that we have in Australia, in France, in Europe. But they always need to get new leads. They don't know how to get how to communicate that well on all the social media and the platforms, and they just need leads constantly. So we start to work with them as well in some market, because our platform, we attract all those people about real estate. So we get quite high qualified leads, and it's quite easy to sell them. And at the end, when we start with Google advertising at the beginning, Google AdSense, and we go to that, we start to generate more and more revenues. Same things with utilities. So everything is there. It's once again highly fragmented, and they need to be seen by local customers. And local customers, basically, they don't have a system to compare. So if they want to compare prices, it's just by relationship, friends. They just ask friends and family. But they need now to have those platforms as USwitch or those kind of guys to just compare prices, etc., etc. So we can help those companies as well. We start to do it in some test markets as well. And there's nothing there. There's no USwitch. There's no Lendy, all those guys. It doesn't exist in those markets. So we want to offer our customers to bring them a lot of value with different services, utilities, home loans, etc. Then we have also all those kind of services marketplace in the likes of Airtasker in Australia, TaskRabbit. So if you look for a plumber, electrician, carpenter, whatever, that makes sense if you're a real estate portal, website, or marketplace. And same thing, you take a cut on the transaction, you bring a lot of value for your customer, you continue to create that ecosystem. Those guys will at some point as well rent, buy, sell properties. And same thing, in those markets, most of the time, those startups do not exist. So it's a good opportunity for us to try to create these. Photography, 360, VR, videos. Photography, so we are speaking about Iran with a lot of listings that were with no pictures. So we try to really focus on our side on listings with pictures only. So we almost have 100% rate of listings with pictures. It's quite hard to achieve, but it works. Once again, all people there are equipped with smartphones, pretty good ones. Sometimes they don't have electricity or running water, but they have pretty good smartphones at the end. So we can offer those services as well to those agencies or landlords. Same thing, it brings more value. You continue to increase the platforms in terms of organic growth, traffic, etc. And it's something that you can easily monetize and sell. There's a real effective value for those customers. So legal and notary services. So we discussed with some guys in other emerging markets. They do that to facilitate the paperwork, etc. So as you guess, in Africa, it's not that easy. All those markets are pretty much really different. Regulation is really not the same from market to another. Sometimes there's a lot or not enough bureaucracy. It's on the both extremes. But all the customers there, they want to understand more how it works. They want to have more secure transactions. And same thing, you continue to bring value to your customers. You continue to increase the quality of the platform, to bring more trust into the different transactions. You get closer to the transaction, and you get another kind of a fee in that process. So premium listing fees, pay-per-click, pay-per-lead, pay-per-call, etc. So for us, it's quite hard to achieve because so we work mostly on the post-paid model. So they pay us when the transaction is done. Different reasons for that. There's a lot of work to do in terms of education to teach them, okay, on the long run, you'll get more sales, you get more commission, you'll get more profit. Some markets as well, the market limit is not that high. So if you speak about small markets with 1, 5, or 10 million people population, even if you cover all the 100 or 200 or 300 agents in the market, it doesn't make sense to charge them all. At the end, you won't make a living out of that. So, but yeah, you need to we test and try. Some markets work, some markets it don't work. And same thing with the ways of payments. It's quite, it can be quite tricky. We can't replicate what has been done in an established market. Mobile money is king, of course. 95% of the transaction online will only be with mobile money. Offline events, so we've been inspired by all those guys in those other more mature markets. There's definitely a lot of things to do there. We are starting to do our own events in some markets like Botswana, and also trying to find where a lot of people from different nations in Africa were living, and to do events there as well, in some places like Dubai, for example. The guys from Myanmar were doing events in Singapore, 300,000 Burmese there. In Dubai, it's pretty much the same. There's a lot of people from different nations in Africa. And those events create a lot of things. Revenues for us, of course. We go deeper into the market, and the real estate market in those different countries. We increase the branding, etc., etc. So yeah, really interesting. And then the holy grail for all of that is, of course, the transaction fees. So we've been trying that pretty much since the beginning, and it works quite well. Now the problem is on how to scale it, definitely. But so basically, we help agents, landlords, agencies, semi-professional agents to sell and rent their properties, and we can get a cut on their commission. It's easy, like 50-50, basically. And we don't have that many problems to track if it had been processed or not at the end. We can establish a trust. We start it as a game almost. We know that sometime it won't work, that sometime we won't see the commission fee, but we won't work with those guys again. So at the end, it can work, and definitely for us, when we can get, for example, for one platform in a market, a few hundreds or a few $1,000s out of Google AdSense, and for each transaction, we get 5 times that. That's really, really efficient. And then we've seen also some surprising other things. It's maybe the step above the transaction, home flipping. So you buy a house, you refurbish, and you sell it again. In some of these markets, sometimes it's not that easy. It's also a cash flow problem. Even in markets like Malawi, etc., it costs you more to buy land in Malawi than to buy land in a remote part in the United States, for example. But it's interesting to do because you basically control the whole thing. You buy it, you sell it, you can market it as you want with your own channels and media. So really interesting to investigate more. And there's of course other ways to generate sales. You can also, there are some guys in other emerging markets that do short-term rentals, for example, which is quite interesting. So yeah, and I think in those early stage emerging markets, since the beginning, we are forced to try different things. And I said Madiba, it always seems impossible until it's done, and that's definitely that. So once again, we said that many times, but at the end, those markets are fragmented, and more than just classifieds, we create kind of ecosystems. We can go through all those different services, and that's the best value we can bring. So thank you, Murakoze, as it said in Kinyarwanda, which is a language from Rwanda. So thanks.
Axel, thanks for that. We've got some questions on Slido here. Let's first of all, let's talk about the markets you're actually monetizing in.
Yep.
Now, actually, what are the markets you cover first?
So Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Lesotho, Swaziland, and Ethiopia, and Somalia, and we are starting in some French-speaking markets. Okay. So all of them, basically, we are monetizing. After it's a matter of volume. The most advanced for us is Botswana. Why? Because it's a mix of, it's quite a stable country, it's really close to South Africa, so there's a lot of money around. And we have a good team there as well. As it was said previously, it's not easy to find good teams, but there the local country manager is really good, so yeah.
Okay, so then let's look at the last question. What's the ROI demanded by these advertisers? So you're monetizing them, but what sort of return on investment are the advertisers looking for?
So it depends which advertisers. So the local businesses, basically, they want traffic. So it can be restaurants, hotels, shops. They just want traffic. So it's really hard to estimate. And then the agencies, etc. We work on a post-paid model, so it's really easy to manage. They make sales through us or rentals. They give us a part of the transaction. Really simple, yeah.
Okay. Now, before we go on the CRM question, the sort of question that goes to my mind is around the transaction side, whether it's the home flipping side or the transaction itself. What percentage of your revenues as a group are coming from the transaction side?
Most of it, to be honest, like 70%. Because once again, advertising, we deploy a lot of efforts to do direct advertising. So if we want to sell advertising to local shops or restaurants, it takes us almost as much time as going to speak with agencies, etc. So we have a little bit of advertising, but most of it now is coming from transactions, yeah.
Okay, so where do you source the listings for the transactions? Are they?
So we go and speak with all the agents on the ground, all the agencies, and then all the landlords, the private sellers, etc., etc. So either on the ground, online a little bit. We don't scrape with data on our competitors or kind of competition because the quality is then really low. We don't have this direct link, etc. So yeah, we really try to have a direct contact with each seller. Yeah.
Okay, so you talk to the agents or even the seller itself. Do you have your own agents for closing out the deal, or do you basically pass leads to agents, they close it out, and they pay you a part of the commission?
So after it depends on the regulations. So in some markets we can be as agents almost. In some markets we are more as marketers because we need to have a certification or a lengthy process to be an agent. So that depends. But we have people on the ground in each market that do one or the other job. It's the same job at the end, it's just a different name. Either a marketer or an agent. Yeah.
And what are some of the key challenges you face by operating in that transaction model?
It always takes time to operate in a new market. There's like a few months of onboarding process. After the main challenge is scaling it. That's it basically. Yeah. We have too many things to do at the same time, so we just do things and yeah.
Okay, so you identify the properties you're going to sell, you use your own platforms to generate leads, close them out with your guys or with agents, grab some commission, and that's 70% of your revenues.
Yeah. And it will probably be a 90 or 95 plus and even more in the next few months, yeah.
Right. And can you give us an idea of the volume of transactions that you're doing?
So volume of transaction, we are speaking for a few transactions every month, every week in each market. And transaction fees can be from $500 to, for bigger properties or farms or things like that, $10,000. Okay. So we go and look for those bigger properties. Yeah. But yeah, we try to do all of them at the end, yeah.
So it sounds like you're in around 10 markets and you're doing a couple of transactions per month in each market. So it's around 20 transactions a month.
Yeah, a few tens of transactions a month, yeah.
Okay. So, and how scalable is this model?
So after basically the agents and agencies, they will spread the word themselves, and they will want to work with us to give us less fee, but to try to negotiate, etc. So there's a kind of an organic sales growth as well.
Right. So then, if I'm an agent, I want to use you as a lead source, and I'll share part of my commission with you.
Yeah, that's it.
So you have this blended model where sometimes you're the agent, sometimes you're driving leads and sharing the commission.
But we are an agent on top of the agent at the end.
Okay, because you have to watch the agent and make sure the transaction occurs and make sure you get paid.
Yeah. And don't forget that in those markets, the key thing as well is that there's no or not much competition, or some competition that is existent. They just look for listing fees. So they look for $1 for one property or something like that. So yeah, we prefer to fight on the $500 or $1,000 for one property once it's sold, and to optimize our process to be able to sell them or rent them. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Axel. I love what's happening in this market. It's very different and very exciting. So well done.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.